we are human, we are animals, we crave the ability to be we. I know it's called me undies. We undies might have sounded differently. Right?
Is it a disco now?
Yeah, it's an after party, so it's now we go with the flash.
My goal in life is to be a laptop sticker.
Me too.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
It's a great honor, Mr. Jaffe. It's always nice to be with you.
I'm so happy to be with you. I'm honored.
Thanks for doing this, too. It's a real service to the community.
Thank you for doing this, Joseph, for doing CoronaTV in general. And it's your gift to the universe, and it's appreciated.
Very human, and I like that.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're insane!
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to CoronaTV. As of today, officially, CoronaTV is a job. I've never worked so hard for so little money in my entire life, but I went ahead and updated my LinkedIn profile. I actually saw Chris Brogan, or hat tip to Chris Brogan. He updated his LinkedIn profile to indicate that he is also a host of a streaming show. So I did the same. And I guess it's now official that I am self-employed, full-time, it seems like. And never have I worked so hard for so much fulfillment and so little money. But the money, as you know, if you've been watching and following, is meaningless at the moment. This is about purpose. It's about passion. It is about pride, and it's about things that start with P, whatever they might be. But you know, it is a calling. It is a calling. I feel like it is a calling, and I thank all of you for being a part of the show. I also have to do a few more thanks, I suppose. You know, let me thank Phil McIntyre, my man at arms. He knows exactly what that means because he recommended my guest today, Rob Cantrell. Rob is a comedian. You'll find out more about him. He's a writer, he's an actor, and he's the host of Cannabis Coffee Hour. I guess that would be the equivalent of comedians in coffee shops getting cannabis or something like that. And I'm looking forward to talking to him about a host of things. So he'll be on the show shortly. Tomorrow, as you know, we have Richard, and then Laura will round out another week of fantastic, interesting, exciting, you know, guests. It's just been an absolute pleasure to get to know some people for the first time and other people just reminiscing and catching up. I thank you every day for liking the show, literally, figuratively, commenting, sharing, subscribing to the show on coronatv.show. The show, you can feel the growth, you can feel the momentum and the engagement, and that's important. Sometimes, you know, right now I'm staring at a screen, I'm staring at a Logitech camera. I can't see you, but I feel you, and I just want to thank you for that. It is today National Herbs and Spices Day. Happy National Herbs and Spices Day. We might be talking about another herb later as well. I'm just trying to see sage, rosemary, parsley, fennel. No, the herb I'm thinking of is not on this chart, but maybe we will dedicate a little bit of the show to that herb a little bit later. Not too many people celebrating birthdays on Facebook, but Brett Kaplan over there, he is. So happy birthday to my Facebook friends, and of course to my LinkedIn friends as well. The only person that I want to call out, and I just want to make sure I'm pronouncing this correctly, is it Mac CNM 3OTOB? Because if I read that correctly, I just want to say happy birthday to you as well. You know who you are, 3OTOB. Sounds like a character from Star Wars, but anyway, happy birthday to you guys. Well, as you know, the seated soliloquy, I don't know how I'm keeping this up. Every day having to write about 300 words or so to talk to you about something on my mind, but something that for the most part is very much connected to my guest. And today, that seated soliloquy is all about the fact that we're living in the age of improv. You know, I heard that phrase years ago, and it really stuck with me. We're living in the age of improv. The story that I tell, which I still use to this day, kind of goes something like this. Oh, and before I explain, I just want to acknowledge two things. I'm not a comedian, although many people tend to laugh at me, right, versus with me. And I also recognize that I might be mixing up stand-up versus improv, but give me some editorial license, okay? So imagine you're a comedian. The ink has just dried on your latest set. It's perfect. You're going to kill. You've practiced it 100 times in front of the mirror and in front of your closest friends and family members who are clearly not biased, right? You know it front to back and back to front. Now it's showtime. You stand up in front of the crowd and you bomb big time. The crowd turns on you. What do you do? What do you do? Do you attack them? Do you freeze? Or do you fight back? Personally, if it were me, I'd pee my pants. And perhaps I'll let my guest today, Rob Cantrell, answer it and give some advice based on real experience, although I'm pretty sure he's never bombed before. Instead, I'll use an analogy for business or entrepreneurship because that's what I know. So if we're living in the age of improv, then we need to be able to pivot, bob, weave, make it up as we go along, change course midstream, mid-execution, adapt or die. No matter how rehearsed or polished or prepared we are, no matter how much we've done our homework or due diligence, no matter how much research or planning we've done, shit happens. And when it does, well, that's when we reveal and show our true colors. That's when we swim or sink. That's when we succeed or fail. That's when we get to test our mettle and whether we are built to soar or, in fact, unfortunately, built to suck. That is exactly what it is to live in the age of improv. And now it gives me great pleasure to welcome my guest today. Comedian Rob Cantrell can be seen on the upcoming season of the TV show The Last OG on TBS. He's acted in sketches on Comedy Central's Colbert Report, HBO's Flight of the Concords, love that, and FX's Totally Biased. Rob has performed stand-up comedy at South by Southwest, Bonnaroo, and the New York Comedy Festival. He has written on projects for Adult Swim, Vice, High Times, Howard Stern, and Comedy Central. Cantrell released a stand-up album in 2018 titled Pure Uncut Joy. He's recorded at Pete's Candy Store in Brooklyn, New York for 800-pound Gorilla Records. Rob lives in New York. He enjoys food, walking, coffee, funky beats, and designing spaceships with his mind. Not really sure what that's about, but we may as well ask him. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Hello, Joseph.
How do you design a spaceship with your mind?
Isn't that what it's all about? Isn't that what we're put on this planet to do? I don't know. I've always thought, yeah, my dream is my spaceship. You want to dream, you want to conceptualize, you want to manifest what's going to take you throughout the world. So a career in comedy writing, a career in cannabis writing, a career in making funky beats, and all of this is the spaceship that you take off to go to your destiny. So yeah, a lot of it all starts with your mind.
So wait, are you the honorary member of Space Force, the inaugural Space Force? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a consultant. They consult me. They hit me up now and then, but mostly, it's just in terms of, I try to keep my feet on the ground and my head in the stars, as Casey Kasem used to say.
Exactly. Now, when I was doing a little bit of research and, getting some information on your bio and a couple of things, I noticed that in fact, you are not the only Rob Cantrell.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's brutal.
It's brutal.
It's brutal, dude. Yeah, people are going to be Googling Rob Cantrell. I catch the heat on internet, on Twitter. I'm not trying to give it any props.
No.
Because I was on TV before all these guys. Ever since I got on television in 2003. So my Google, I was the #1 Rob Cantrell. And then all of a sudden, the last few years, there's some Proud Boy, not Antifa, Proud Boy complete, just political weirdo burning down buildings and leftist bookstores named Rob Cantrell. And he's been sought out on internet, and like people have written huge papers about him, how awful he is. He's like hired gun to like break up protests right now and all of this things that are happening right now. So yeah, I have gotten, just a few weeks ago, there was, as you brought up, there was a picture of this guy screaming in another police officer's face with a mask.
Yeah.
And it was in Michigan. And they say it's Rob Cantrell, but actually it's not even the Rob Cantrell they're talking about.
I know. It's
the whole story is completely fucked, and I don't like even giving it that much press. But I do think it's kind of interesting because people started coming at me on Twitter. But if you look at my Twitter, it's like, I'm retweeting Tracy Morgan. I do shows with Eric Andre. I was born in Washington, D.C. in 1972. I went to public school. Like, you're not going to get a bigger ally to the African-American movement and Black Lives Matter than myself. I mean, that's just the gig. And I'm not political at all. I'm not online tweeting about politics in any way. I try to set an example is how I try to go. I know I've opened up a whole thing, but I'm not that political, but it's a weird political thing that's happening.
Well, it's relevant. And I was just thinking that if you're anti-Antifa, are you just for? Or I don't know what
double negatives cancel each other out. Yeah, if you're just fun. I don't even know. I get what Antifa is, I guess, but this
might be for
Antifa. This dude's like a Proud Boy, so it's like this dude's borderline Nazi that's out there.
Well, listen. So here's where we bring it back to the subject of comedy, which is we're living in unprecedented times and dark times as well, and the world has gone mad. I describe, even when I started CoronaTV, I said, when the world went mad, I started streaming. Some people were screaming like the other Rob, I was streaming. But, look, we've been through this before as a country after 9/11. And the question was, when is too soon? When can you go there? How can you be funny? How can you laugh? How can you find joy or see the funny side of what's going on? It must be tough to be a comedian right now.
Well, you can't perform live right now, so it's
no, you can't.
I think the people that got it worse than us is Broadway. Like, Broadway got knocked out. Restaurants are rough. Comedy clubs got hit hard, but they're starting to slowly open up. The new thing in my industry, they're doing drive-in comedy shows. So you go to the drive-in movie theater and the comedian goes on stage and they have it all mic'd up for your car. And those are actual tours that are starting to go right now. Mm-hmm. So it's it's funny. It's hard. I've gone all in with my podcast, the Cannabis Coffee Hour, booking guests, taking it a lot more serious in terms of lining up the Patreon, getting the quality, buying better mics. A lot of it's just been focused towards writing and kind of just taking care of all your online stuff. There has been some Zoom shows. I have done a couple. I don't really like them, but and I have a couple stand-up comedy albums that are on Pandora, that are on Spotify, that are being played on Sirius and XM. And those royalties actually went up during all of this because I guess people are inside. So that's helped me keep afloat. So yeah, it's hard for all of us. It's completely odd, but I see a little, I don't want to say it too much, but I do feel a little bit of the light at the end of the tunnel that people are going to start. I'm doing a show in DC at the Arlington Draft House, which is a cool theater. the last week of July, and it holds 300 people, and they're only letting 50 in. So 50 people in a 300 room. I don't know how it's going to go over, but everybody's just doing this slow roll to open and figuring out, we've never been here before.
No, we haven't. And Steve Garfield, by the way, said that Baratunde Thurston did a great live comedy show on Zoom. So there is some experimenting going on. I thought it was interesting. Bob Farnham said, "Did somebody say better mics?" It's funny how both Rob, you and I are going through the same evolution, which is there's lighting and there's sound and there's cameras and there's and we're producing ourselves and we're figuring out what that solution looks like. But when you look at it in totality, there's something that is so powerful in this equation, and that's the audience, the power of the live audience. And if you ever wanted an example of that, Bill Maher, when he does his show, he's got all these, he's mixing in tracks of audience laughing, and then he's showing, and of course they're from 40 years ago and 50 years ago and the 50s and 60s and whatever. And I look at it and I think maybe it's needed and necessary that even if I at home am not reminded about everyone else sharing this with me, it just seems a little sterile and a little, inanimate.
Yes, I know. How do you pronounce it? Baratunde's I know him well. He actually is from DC, and he's a good friend of mine. But I'm pronouncing his name wrong right now. Baratunde? Is that how? Baratunde Thurston. Yeah, he did do a live comedy show. I've done some live comedy shows. I get it, and I feel good after I perform. But yeah, you do want a rhythm. You do want you want to hear the laughter. But at the same time, you don't have to. You can do it. It is a good experience. But I guess what I'm weighing out now is we're all streaming. We're all doing podcasts. If I do too many free shows online that's super awkward, is it going to come back and haunt me in terms of this footage? If I go to the table, let's say I get a little bit more heat or something happens and I get to go to Netflix for a meeting, and then all of a sudden somebody has an hour of me bombing on, it's just, these are the things I'm kind of letting you inside my mind and how I'm weighing everything out, whether I'm going to do the Zoom show or not, I guess is what I'm trying to play out. But it can be done. I want to do it, but at times I'm just, it's that extra, like, after doing stand-up live in front of audiences for so long, it feels good, but I don't know, it's kind of like flying a simulator, I would say. It's like you fly a real plane, and then they're like, okay, go into the computer simulator, which feels like you're getting stuff done, but it's not as fun.
I appreciated so much this idea of, as you say, letting not just me, but all of us into your mind, because in many respects, you represent a new wave and a new hope for artists and celebrities and comedians. I mean, over the last few weeks, we saw Joe Rogan just coin it big time. And it's not just Joe Rogan, it's John Krasinski with some good news. This is good news. It is good news for people that have a voice and have a platform and have that differentiation. And I'm just going to put on screen right now, for those of you that haven't heard of Patreon. Rob, do you want to just kind of talk a little bit about what Patreon is and how you're using it? And then I'll come back to it.
Yeah, I just started doing it. But as you said, I do think the entertainment industry, as the music industry, everything's flip-flopping. And it really is becoming the artist. If they're on their game, nobody should be in their hands crying like, oh, nobody's going to listen to me, because everybody can open up their laptop and open up an account and get this thing going. But it really takes the elbow grease and just taking, the low months and taking the hits. But I do know with Patreon, I have friends that have had podcasts now that are making up to like 50 grand a month off of Patreon.
Wow.
And then there's another one that's called Just Fans, which is another one that's kind of, you know, a little bit like there's like porn stars and strippers on there, but there's also game dudes and comedians and musicians and anybody that has an intense following. But Patreon is pretty much, you put something behind a paywall, they do a monthly subscription, and you have exclusive content behind the paywall. Or if you sign up to my Patreon, you could see the live video feed of the Cannabis Coffee Hour. Now, the free version is on Spotify, it is on iTunes, it is on the Google podcasting format, everything that's on the Libsyn or on the whatever you do, Podbean. But if you want to see the video of the show, which I just started doing, like I guess I started my podcast a year and a half ago. I just did it weekly. I followed Bill Burr, who did a podcast where he would just rant into a mic for an hour. I've done podcasts before. I've done projects before. And what I've learned is if you don't have the money, it's going to run out if you don't do everything yourself in terms of like booking and everything else. Like that takes a whole production company. That's the whole thing. Instead of hiring a production company, it's coming down to you're the production company. But if you want to take it up a notch, then, you know, you go towards a production company. But for something as simple as a podcast, you really have all the technology in your phone and you can do it. It just really takes, what I've heard with podcasts, it takes 100 episodes, but you have to be consistent. And I have been consistent. Every week I've put out something. The last 10 weeks I've had guests that I just started reaching out to, and it's been fun over Zoom. You know, I just do a whole hour of Zoom, take the audio, take the video, chop that up into what's going to be the video behind the scenes. So in terms of cannabis, especially on the East Coast, that it's not fully legal and everything's kind of in this weird gray area, except for like California and Colorado. But in my mind, it's always been legal. It kind of helps having it behind a wall and I'm not like blazing up on the internet all day everywhere, which I'm not really afraid of because every rapper in the world's doing it. But it kind of takes the pressure off of whoever's going to be on camera.
Well, I want to come back to cannabis in a second, but I wanted to show this because I didn't show your full Patreon. You did something that I think is unique, and also, you know, it's creative and it's making it your own. You actually have one more tier. So there's a $3 level, a $9, a $30 a month, and then there's a whopping $10,000 per month. So what do you get for 10? Because I'm sure there are people watching right now that are signing the check or initiating the wire. What do we get for $10,000 a month, Rob?
Oh, you just, I mean, you get first you get an executive producer credit. So if you want to get into show business, you're going to get an executive. Well, I don't know if you'll get you'll get a producer credit on my next stand-up special. So that's the big thing. And then what else did I put here? The thing is, I just signed up for this Patreon. I've had it for like 2 months, and I do want to like go over these tiers. And the thing is, you can, like everything on the internet, you can always go back and kind of clean up and get it just as tight as you want. But yeah, you get 12 pounds of coffee for $10,000 a month. And once a year, I will come to your home and make a sandwich and then arm wrestle you for it. And then you get a producer credit on my stand-up special. So that's what you get. But it's, you know, it's a $10,000 goof, but not really a goof. There might be somebody that is a really big fan of mine out there that wants to throw down and support my career. So who am I to hold them back?
I think you might be surprised, and I don't know if you would never know this about me, but for my fourth book, which was called Zero, I put the book on Kickstarter, and I created a bunch of levels. There was a $10,000 level, and I believe 2 people or 2 companies subscribed to the $10,000 level. But what I did, this is how I cheated. So I cheated. I can admit it now. So what I'd done in advance is I said, if you purchase I think it was like 500 copies of the book or 1,000 copies of the book, I will give you a keynote on the house, and you can do it through this $10,000. So it was cheating, but it wasn't cheating. It was a barter, a value-add barter, and I was just talking to them, quietly and offline. But I actually think, in the end, the book or the Kickstarter raised just over $50,000, and it was probably the second. I think maybe only Seth Godin had raised more money for a book. But it was just thinking of a creative way to use a monetization platform. So I think you're going to get your 10,000 sooner than you think.
10,000 a month? All right, I'll go for it. Yeah, it would help out the whole operation. So, I mean, eventually I do want to make it a television show, and that's kind of, I have worked with High Times, and I do love coffee, and it doesn't have to be about getting stoned. It's more of a background to interview, interesting people and have conversations. Everybody I've had on now have been professional friends that I've known for like 10 years. But over the years in comedy, I've gotten to know a lot of people, and it's just been a lot of fun. But there's still a lot of work to be done. I guess that's what I'm saying. It's like, I would like to see it as a television show. So somebody that puts in 10 grand, I can get a production company with that. I can hire somebody to do the super editing and shoot it at the back of a coffee shop and make it smooth and, get a real sponsor with a cannabis company. So those are all the angles that I'm working right now.
And look, it puts you out. It's a point of view. But by the way, Phil, our mutual friend, Phil McIntyre, said, what kind of sandwich?
What kind of sandwich? Well, I would say, for the 10,000, I'll say, what I'm really good. Have you ever had fried bologna? I would get. Yeah. Have you had fried bologna? It's been a while. Nobody fries bologna anymore.
Oh, that's great.
I would give you, and I know how to fry bologna. I would get it all black and crusted on the sides, and we get some good toast. Do some toast the bread, maybe white, maybe wheat. We're kind of moving into more of a healthier mode. So, some good wheat toast in the toaster. So if you're going to make a sandwich, you got to toast the bread. Don't come at me. I'm going to toast your bread. I've worked in delis. I've worked in every type of restaurant there is. So
fighting words.
Toaster. What's that?
Those are fighting words. Like, don't come at me with your.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I know how to make a damn good sandwich. And my quesadilla game is next level. I could knock out a quesadilla blindfolded. But I'd give you a great fried bologna sandwich and barbecue chips. We would hang out, maybe arm wrestle, and enjoy the afternoon, and then I would say goodbye. But you would get that producer sandwich in a sandwich. We'd hang out. If you want a tomato, with fried bologna, you don't really do fruit. So, but we can change it up. I could do a good veggie sandwich. Mostly it's about the toast. If you toast the bread, and if you cut the sandwich in an angle, you're just elevated the sandwich into a bunch of different levels.
So, as Howard Stern would say in an interview, and I'm a student. I'm studious to try and even be a fraction of Howard Stern. He said, "What have we learned?" Well, we've learned a lot, and we've certainly learned about the art of making a fried bologna sandwich. Although Bob says bologna and cheese and a toothpick. So someone's hungry out there. I don't know if Bob's writing the check, but he's certainly making a sandwich.
Some people do mayonnaise. I would go yellow mustard with my fried bologna. I would go toast. I would go 2 slices of bologna, and you got to get it to bubble up. It bubbles up. When you get the bologna to make a bubble, that's when you're done.
Bubble.
It's got to bubble. If there's no bubble, it's not fried bologna. Well, and then you get it on there and you mash it, maybe cut it in half to make it classy at an angle.
I mean, Steve's talking about what about grilling the bread, but I like to actually grill it on the grill. Have you ever done that? If I'm switching it up, let's go classy. Hey, Rob, I want some tomato soup and a grilled cheese with a slice of organic tomato right in the middle. I could do that for you. And I wouldn't mess with the toast. But if you're doing club sandwich style, I guess it's all about melting
the cheese. You go with the bread on the griddle if you want the cheese melted. French is yellow. Yeah, if you're going to do the bologna, you go the yellow mustard. You don't go spicy brown. But if you're going to go turkey, you got to kick some spicy brown.
All right. Well, Steve's been, by the way, he's been cooking and streaming live his cooking. So I want to see him. Steve, I'm challenging you, and I will alert Rob to this as well. When you're ready to do one of your little cooking shows, why don't you show us what a nice little fried bologna with a little bit of, I don't know, you know what to do with your Frenches. Yeah, come on. We'll basically judge you. You're judging us, we'll judge you.
Yeah, Steve, you'll blow up. You'll blow up the internet. I'm telling you. I've tapped this. I've done the market research. Bologna's coming back big, because it's gotten forgotten the last 20 years. Everything comes back.
All right, so now
I'm telling you, 2021. Put your llamas were big last year. All right, sloths are killing it right now. Bologna is banging in 2021.
So not only is bologna back, but I tell you what else is back is my interesting little segue back to cannabis, because I would be remiss if we didn't talk about cannabis. Rob, every comedian has an angle, right? Every comedian has something that they're known for, that they differentiate. You know, it's why cannabis for you? What's the love? What's the connection? Why have you built a platform on it?
I wouldn't say it's a shtick.
Not a shtick, but like
but I get what you're kind of coming from. But you're right there. I think the idea with comedy is to completely be yourself, and when you can completely be yourself, I mean the type of self that isn't at work, that isn't, and it's that secondary person. It's the real person. And that's the hardest one to show. And I think that's the key for me. It's almost about self-exploration, self-identity, figuring it all out, and how to be as open and real as possible. And then trusting that your funny personality will come through to that. With cannabis, cannabis has helped me in my early days in stand-up comedy. I started in 1999 when I was 25 years old, about a few years before 9/11. Actually, I could tell you a story about performing on 9/11 doing stand-up comedy in California. So that's a whole other story. But with cannabis, I guess I was in my 20s. I drank a lot in college. My freshman year, I drank. Even in my teen years, my dad died when I was 10. I found solace in social places with alcohol, but it would tear my stomach apart. I would do things I would totally regret. And the whole alcohol thing, I just saw through it. By the time I was 20, I was just like, this is not good for your system. This is not good for society. I'm not bumming anybody out. But for the spaceship that I want to take, cannabis was, didn't give me a hangover. I got to hang out with more interesting people. I was more introspective. It helped me be more creative. It made me be more of a pacifist. It made me more empathetic. I think in terms of health, it's helped me stay young. To tell you the truth, I stopped drinking socially probably at 25, and I'm 48 right now. And I feel great. I smoke pretty much every other night, I would say, when I'm out, because I have to do late nights and I'm surrounded by booze. And the thing about starting out in stand-up, you don't get paid. Like, you really have to hustle everything because everybody wants the job. It's the best job ever. When it's going good, it's the best. Nobody tells you what to do. You arrive, you talk for 45 minutes, and you get paid. That's when it works great. But it takes 15 to 17 years to even get to that point. But when it goes great, it's amazing. And But the only thing is that you get free booze. So I saw a lot of peers, you know, bombing, getting your ego crushed, losing jobs because you're going for your dream. So you go to booze because the bar is free. If you're the comic, you're getting paid $50, but guess what? You could drink $300 for free every night of top shelf, whatever you want. But a lot of my peers ended up, you know, cirrhosis of the liver, not even make it to 45. Like, you know, it's a wrap if you're drinking like that. I don't know, maybe some people could pull it off, but for me, it didn't help. And cannabis was a way to blow off steam and also be creative during the day. It was, and environmentally, I think it's definitely would help the country and help society in terms of paper, in terms of using as plastics, in terms of industrial hemp. I think it's great. I think CBD for anxiety, I think for mental health, CBD is going to be something that's going to be essential moving forward. So yeah, I just had a vision that I knew in my heart of hearts, people wanted it to be legal, and I thought it was going to be legal. And I've been kind of not grandstanding it, but just, hey, I came from San Francisco. This is where the Grateful Dead came from. This is where, you know, I wanted to be the beatnik. I wanted to be Jack Kerouac. And I guess I lived it. I did do it. I rode all day in coffee shops. I smoked. I worked all night long, working and living in hostels throughout my mid-20s. And, you know, eventually I got to LA and it worked out. And it's a lot of fun.
I love your response, and there was something right at the beginning that I think I know people watching would appreciate, and that's this idea of authenticity, of being true to yourself, and hearing that voice inside and being able to communicate and convey that essence of who you are. So thank you for sharing that little almost introspective. I have to tell you, you know, my mom is watching right now, so she just said she's watching. So I'm just going to say on the record, I don't know what cannabis is. So this is all it's very new to me. But I will tell you that my gut in me, and I think you're in the right place at the right time. It's funny, you talk about grandstanding. Sometimes it's all about timing and being in a holding pattern. I just sense, and I think many people do, that the legalization of cannabis is going to be so much better for society because we are addicted. We are addicted. It is another epidemic which is addicted to big pharma and all of this medication and over medication and opioid addiction. I mean, it really is a travesty. And as you're saying and talking about being a pacifist, I'm thinking to myself, Rob, maybe we should send some samples to the other Rob Cantrell, or the guy who was called Rob, or the artist formerly known as. Anyway,
I know.
But yeah, I mean, I think, and of course, the states are going to need the revenue now. So, you know, keep on.
Yeah, but I will say it is a psychoactive drug. So you are messing with your brain. I don't think anybody should smoke it before 21. But it has helped me kind of manage some of the stress that going for your dream. You know, going for your dream is one of the hardest things, to look inside yourself and really say, how can I make heaven on earth? I think that's the gig. That's the spaceship, my man. That's the mothership connection. How? Because we all know life's a gift. Life's a gift. This even existence, if I wasn't in America, if I was on some weird island in some other country, some other universe, the existence is the gift. And what we do with the gift is make what we think heaven on earth is. And my heaven on earth is waking up, stretching, meditating, doing something creative like writing a book or writing some stand-up, taking a nap, smoking some cannabis, playing some guitar, eating with my family, going to perform, work on the performance, and then go to bed and redo it over and over and over again. I guess music and comedy, those are the two things that I always loved, that I found great joy in, that I took great joy in. And I got a job right after college as a salesman. I went to a liberal arts school, was an English major, was a creative writing major, with not much direction. There wasn't I wanted to be a comedian, but I knew how hard it was going to be. I literally knew how hard it was going to be. And I stayed away from that dream until I was 25, and I kind of faced it. And I started performing, and my life, my trajectory, my outlook, who I became, who I ended up marrying, everything is come from that decision of, going for your dream, which is super, super scary, especially if you don't have healthcare, especially if you've never, with show business, I think with internet and stuff like this, YouTube's, you could see other people doing it, but there was a sense of the unknown. And I think that's what I guess what I'm leaning is, we're in the unknown right now. And I'm saying, don't be afraid of the unknown, grasp the unknown, because if you let your mind just kind of let go and be yourself, something will appear that will, kind of lead you in the right direction.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I was thinking, first of all, if you want to, if you're just finding out now for the first time about the one, the only Rob Cantrell that you should care about or concern yourself with, Cantrell with an E, I'm going to actually make it my life's work right now, Rob, to make sure that that I figure out how to send all the SEO love your way to Cantrell with an A and E, to make sure that other guy is pushed down. But you can go to his website, robcantrell.com. You can subscribe to his podcast, Cannabis Coffee Hour, and more importantly, that $10,000 a month level on Patreon is available, and it's access. But you're giving us access today, and that's what's so awesome. A little bit of an entry point into where you are in the world and where you're heading and where you've come from. I mean, you were a finalist on Last Comic Standing. It was the very first season. I watched it. I loved it. So therefore I loved you, because it was just a fantastic season. But it was also, it gave us for the first time that little insider look at the competitiveness and how cutthroat it can be, and how difficult it is to rise up and to differentiate yourself. And so I guess my final question for you today, Rob, is, and I know you're going to join us in the after show Zoom room. You're not going to be performing live stand up, but I would love you to tell us about the story, the 9/11 story.
I will.
Rob, what's the lesson?
And I also got arrested in New York City. I did 3 nights in jail for cannabis for a joint this big in 2007. So that was another, and I wrote about it on High Time, so I could tell that story. But
we want to hear that too. And I know Jan had a question for you as well earlier about the difference between audio comedy and video comedy, but we're going to save all of that for the Zoom after show. My final question for you is, the one thing about being a comedian is bombing is a part of life. It's almost like you cannot call yourself a comedian, like you can't call yourself an entrepreneur if you haven't failed, if people haven't said no, if you haven't been rejected. What's the lesson that you've learned being a comedian that you can share with people now that are, quite frankly, maybe some of them facing failure in terms of being laid off or whatever the case may be for the first time?
Yeah, I would say it's all about your reaction. And bombing is traumatic, and I've done it a lot. And any comedian that's worth their salt has done it a lot. It really, once you get to a point that it's a part of the equation, it doesn't hurt as much. And there comes a point where you can it's more about you sweating, you reacting, you getting angry, all of those things, and then you being in so many different situations that you learn what's best for you and to handle that. But there is a lot of lessons in failure, and especially in ego. I think what's going on with our president, this guy is just full of so much ego. Meditation has helped me kind of realize my ego. And as a performer, you're really And I think as a business person, you're really pushing your ego to the max to kind of get in front of things and get your name out there. But at the same time, it's the one thing that can stop you from learning and evolving is listening to it. So no, I think bombing, you know, I had some of the worst ones. I guess if you want to hear some of my stories about bombing, but I guess maybe like the first few times, like the first time I performed was without a mic, and it was kind of like an artsy scene, and I did it, and I just went up there and it felt good. It was really supportive. Then the second time was like with a real microphone in like a punk rock laundromat in San Francisco that they would have comedy. And I remember bombing so bad. Nobody was listening to me. Everybody was just talking. And I was even yelling at the audience, but they couldn't even tell I was yelling at them. The crowd noise was so loud. But what I learned was like confidence. Like you need to have confidence, but you can't be too overconfident. That's the problem with comedy is like, if you go in too hard and you're so full of vigor and you want it to work and you want to kill and you go in really hard, it scares the audience. You come in too hard, you freak them out, and it's a gentle dance. So there is like, you kind of want to be as much in the moment as possible. You don't want to be ahead of the moment and you don't want to be behind the moment. You just want to get to the microphone, get out the first joke, let it breathe, and then recompose yourself and go right back into it. But the first few times it seems it just like it's all this sensations, it's all this adrenaline that's kicking in, and you're trying to make everything work and you're kind of getting laughs and you're kind of not, but it just takes a minute. It takes a while in order to where you're comfortable in your skin and you can even bomb gracefully. You know, you can tell comedian Salt how they handle a bad set, you know. If they freak out, and I've done it, and lose their temper, sometimes it's there. It's not the best thing. If you just kind of take it on the chin and be like, and just keep moving, is kind of the better thing. I don't know. That's what I've learned is just keep it moving. If I've learned anything is just keep it moving.
I love that. There was so much in that response that I know I learned from. I put the quote up above us that said, "Those who have learned to improvise have prevailed, or collaborate and improvise have prevailed." Do you have any idea who said that? I don't think you would, because it's a little too esoteric. It's not who you would think.
I think I've heard this quote before, but no, I don't know who it is.
It was, believe it or not, Charles Darwin.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, I heard on that excursion to the Galapagos, he had a couple of unbelievable sets. I mean, he killed it on. But anyway, that's a different story for a different day.
No,
Rob,
you're right. I think in show business, I do believe a lot of it is just a group effort to get a goal accomplished. And you find that in filmmaking and comedy and drama and everything, that collaborating as an artist is, and there's a dance to it, you know, because it does take a lot of ego to be an artist, to get it going, to find your own voice. You're fighting for this, but there is a maturity and understanding that great art or great projects or great spaceships come together when a team comes together, and you're kind of changing the vibes, and you're, you know, working with what they got and what you got to create a whole other thing.
All right. Well, I'm fully on board. We're going to start the countdown now to the Zoom after show. Rob, thank you so much for coming in and or not coming in, just, you know, staying put, I should say. It was really a pleasure, and looking forward to continuing the conversation in the Zoom.
Great. Thank you for having me, Joseph.
Take care.